Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to this week's episode. Today, we've got a guest joining us today, Brian Avila. Thank you, Brian, for doing this. Guys, I was having technical difficulties last time, and my perfectionist side wanted to start putting me down. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going with the flow, and I really appreciated your willingness to sit down with me again. So thank you. Let us know a little bit about yourself, Brian.
Of
All
course, yes. I'm definitely really happy to be here. And so a little bit about myself. Let's see. So I was born and raised in Salinas, California. That's actually where I'm at the moment. And yeah, I grew up here, very traditional Mexican household, and started working when I was 12 years old. I worked about 5 years in agriculture in the fields, picking crops. You name it, I picked pretty much every kind of vegetable for the most part. And that was an awesome experience. I did get to start college when I was like 15 and a half, I believe. So I was pretty young when I started college. And yeah, and then when I was 18, I started my venture into the financial industry. And that's how my entrepreneurship journey started taking off. And I had a few different journeys in my life. The first main one that shifted or changed my life completely was my entrepreneurship journey. And I think the next journey that's really made a big impact in my life was the spiritual awakening journey. And then, yeah, that one had a lot of areas that needed to be worked on or understood um, or discovered, I guess you can say. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me. Let's see, I'm 23 years old. Yeah, I'm 23 years old. And yeah, let's see, I love to work out. I love to eat. And that's a little bit about me. And I love to coach people, and I love to coach people. Yes.
Yeah, I saw that really beautiful post you just made of someone sharing their experience with you. And I just want to say I haven't had a coaching session with you, but the times that I have asked you for advice, I really do feel your love and your energy, your genuine care for people being able to decipher what's right for them. I really took that off just from those voice messages we shared, and I really appreciated that. Um, I actually definitely wanted to talk about something. I see that you make a lot of posts. By the way, I'm for sure going to be posting your social media and everything down below in the description bar, but I've been loving your posts, and there's been some that definitely they hit. Especially a few months back. I feel like I would have definitely loved to have heard some of those things. However, I realized that maybe even if I heard them, they would have gone right over my head. And I would have, my ego, I know for a fact my ego was so attached that I wasn't able to drop from my head to my heart. So I would have just been like, no, that's not right. And one that I definitely want to bring up and get your perspective on was because I know that a lot of people watching this are going to relate to this. I just know it because I've had myself conversations with people about it. And it was one where you said there's some times where it was a sketch you did, and it was, I love the sketches, by the way. And you were saying that one of them was saying that the girlfriend was starting to be controlling and controlling the actions and being wanting who it was that they were hanging out with. And you went on to just explain in the description bar some of the reasons why people start to become controlling. And I know that you coach on relationships, lots of different areas of life. Maybe you can share some of the things that you do coach on just life coaching. And I know that that one hit for sure because I caught myself. It took me back to a few months in my life where I was really controlling. I started to be really controlling over uh, a partner's actions, their hobbies that they wanted to do, the people that they wanted to hang out with. And then the description was just hitting home where I didn't realize until after I was out of there that I had abandonment issues. And I was, when they were wanting to go and do other things in my brain, that was subconsciously correlating to they're slowly starting to abandoning me and they're not wanting to be by me. I know you went through and described some of the reasons why low self-esteem, and I checked off a lot of those, and I definitely wanted to get your perspective. If someone is in that moment in their life right now, what are some things that they can start doing within themselves? Because for me, it was a lot of pointing fingers and you need to make me feel safe, but I never once also pointed the finger inward and realized that I was the creator also of that situation.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think awareness is key. And you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to make sure I touched on, which was that if you're not ready for the message, no message will ever hit you the way that it needs to hit you, basically, right?
Mm,
You need to be ready for that message, and I call it you need to be conscious or awakened, ready, prepared for that message. Because I know for a fact in the past there was many things that people would talk about or preach that I myself would it wouldn't align with the frequency that I was running at that point in time. And because I understand that, now I also understand that certain people will resonate with my message, other people will not resonate with my message, but disattaching ourselves from the from the idea that people need to resonate with our message is freedom, I think, for anyone who posts things and is wondering, man, why is it that some people can't relate to these messages, or why is it that it's just they're not operating at that frequency, and timing is everything, right? So I do believe that. So now if somebody's dealing with different things. I know you mentioned a couple of them, like low self-esteem and abandonment issues, and I know there was a few different ones that I talked about. I think it's important to be self-aware about it more than anything, because most people live through life and then they just label it something that it's not, right? They label it something that it's not, or they validate why it's okay to be that way in their life. So they'll tell themselves, I like to call it a BS story, a belief system, right? Because it's a belief system, right? A belief system that we operate in, where we have been telling ourselves this story for so long that it now became our truth.
mm,
And it's not, here's the reality, it became a truth, not our truth. There's a difference between a truth, that's like a belief that you created for yourself, and your truth. Your truth is your truest reality, like what you know to be true to you. And so when you become aware, it allows you to put that specific thing on the spotlight. Like, oh, shoot, you know what? I have been feeling levels of low self esteem. Okay, now we can label it something, right? Now we can label it something so we can either put it in writing or just bring it to light, kind of thing. And then we have to ask ourselves, why do I feel these levels of low self esteem? And a lot of the time, it'll be because of our childhood, these abandonment issues, right? Or we might this low self-esteem, it might come because of the way we were raised, the environment that we were raised in, the way our parents raised us. Sometimes the way our parents express their love towards us, they don't realize it because they're operating based on what they know best and based on how they were raised and their own cultural beliefs or religious beliefs, whatever it may be. And uh and then and then the outcome is us living the way we're living now. We're going into these relationships and taking on these same approaches, and we know that it's bringing about negative emotions, but we don't know what to do about it, basically, right? So then what are some steps that we could do? Well, number one, if you're not in a relationship, I think this is a perfect time for you to like really tune into who you are, because if you don't tune into who you are, you're always going to feel inclined to become codependent on someone else. If you don't fill up your tank, your self love tank, then you're going to be placing that responsibility on someone else. I know you mentioned that. And it's so easy to point fingers at someone else when they're not doing the job that you, or the idea of the job they should be doing in your life, because that's what it is. It's an idea of a job they should be doing in their life. But that is not fair for us to lay that responsibility on a person that is already handling their individual self, and they're choosing, listen to that, they're choosing to love you. They're choosing to work with you. They're choosing to make space for you to continue your healing, right? But it's not their job to heal you. It's their job to make space for you to be able to heal, right? And I think understanding that is really important. So if you're single, what you can do, the best thing you can do is learn to be by yourself. Learn to fill your self-love tank by yourself, do the things you love, create a sense of individuality for yourself. Okay? Because otherwise, you're going to be always laying that responsibility on someone else. You've never discovered yourself. And what's crazy is every time they're not meeting an expectation, which to be honest, they're never going to really meet the expectation because the only one that can fill your self-love tank is yourself. So I guess that's a tip for someone that's single, someone that's in a relationship. Well, that one's you've already developed all these different all these different traits or there's different ways of like being in the relationship. You've been accustomed to pointing fingers at someone else instead of digging with it and taking responsibility for yourself. If you're in a relationship, I think you got to sit down with yourself and practice spending time by yourself. Practice spending time. Practice disattaching yourself from needing to be with your partner 24/7. Because that word need, we become slaves to that word need. Need is a very negative thing in our life when we realize why it's negative, right? Because should you need the presence of someone? No, you shouldn't need the presence of someone outside of you because the moment they're not there, what happens now? Do you just break down? Do you lose yourself? No, you need to learn to spend time with yourself. Make time for yourself. Make time to, by the way, and take full responsibility for your healing, right? So that's a few things that I would say.
That's really good. Thanks for doing both when you're single and then when you're in a relationship. Because yeah, when you're in a relationship, you already created those habits, and that definitely was my thing. And I, looking back, I definitely wish I could go back and tell myself, like you said, just detach and discover yourself. Go figure out what you want to do, what lights you up, what gets your creative juices going. And I understand it's hard, but a lot of peace comes with it and taking that ownership of your life. So thank you for sharing that. Do you think that you were ever in a position where you either were that way or you attracted anyone? I know that you've been now in your spiritual journey and where you are now, and you speak a lot on feminine and masculine energy. Do you think you were ever in a position where you can think, oh, I attracted someone that was giving those codependent tendencies? And how?
Yes, yes, I think that's a really good question. So yeah, I feel like we attract based on a certain energy that we're living on, right? We attract based on a certain energy that we live on. So if we're this hurt masculine, for example, that believes that we need to control everything in our life, we're gonna attract people that want to be controlled. We're gonna attract people that want to be dependent on us, that are not self-reliant on themselves. And so that is a huge thing to understand because these kind of people, we're gonna run into them a lot. We're gonna run into them a lot. We're gonna run into people where we fall in love with an idea of who they could become, but then if you start digging deep as to, hey, you know what? Why is this person pursuing me, or why are they allowing me to pursue them? To what degree do they have me in their life? Because it can get a little bit deep. I once was getting to know somebody, and I had to realize that this person was allowing me in their life to the degree that they were allowing me because they were trying to fill a void inside of them. And that void was a void of loneliness, right? Loneliness. And because of that, this person would always be there for me. They would always be available, accessible to me. And to anybody outside looking at it from an outside perspective, they would have thought to themselves, wow, that's great. That's the kind of like person that I would want. But see, I got to understand the roots of what this person, the role that this person was playing in my life, and why they were playing that role. Because the motive of why people do something is everything. The motive of why people do everything. And remember, the world and the universe gives us things based on our motive. We can say one thing, but our motives are gonna really attract what it should be attracted to us, basically, right? So yes, I've been in positions where I've attracted people based on a certain energy that I'm operating on, and so that self-awareness. Remember, you're pointing fingers. One finger's going that way, but three fingers are pointing back at your in your direction, right? So that self-responsibility of understanding, not just the question isn't, oh, why do no, the question shouldn't be like external of like why do things are happening, like why are they being attracted in this way? No, what's happening inside of me? What way am I living that is attracting these kind of people? That self-awareness.
Yes, that's a really good change, that change within the question, because that's something I've been asking myself a lot. I'm like, okay, what within me is attracting? What within me is allowing people to treat me this way, or having
Mhm.
them be comfortable enough to want to say certain things to me? It's obviously an energy that I'm putting off. And I've definitely been trying to take a lot of accountability of anything that bothers me. I'm like, okay, well, why? Why is it mirroring to me right now? What within me? Why is it stinking when someone else does that? It's obviously something within me. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I know that you also are masculine, feminine energy. Could you share with us a little bit about what that is, what that looks like to be in your divine masculine, feminine energy, for people that I feel like it's starting to be all over the place, and some people are just questioning more. What does it look like? Like now my friends are starting to be like, oh, I want to be in my divine feminine. And I swear just like a year or two ago, it wasn't something that I really heard at all.
Yeah, so I think in regards to that, we become vessels of light to people, right? The more you embody a philosophy, the more people will feel attracted to that. It's always been something that they've been trying to discover. They just haven't had too much light, around that topic to make them feel, that courage to take that approach and ask, what is that all about, basically, right? So what is masculine, feminine? And then also, if I forget, remind me to mention about a specific conversation that I had with somebody I was coaching, an entrepreneur that I was coaching about this and how it goes hand in hand in entrepreneurship, because that was huge. That discovery just happened like a week ago. But masculine and feminine energy. First thing is to understand the yin and the yang, basically, right? Is that we both possess, all human beings, whether male or female, possess masculine and feminine energy. And this is not something that, by whatever sexuality people prefer, basically. It doesn't matter if you operate this way in relationships or that way, feminine, masculine energy lives within us. Now, what is a masculine energy? The masculine energy is the doer. That's the leader inside of us, the decision maker inside of us, the action taker inside of us, right? The one that takes the takes the approach, the one that goes after it, the one that gives us the courage, basically, right? And the feminine is more of the softer sides inside of us, right? Just as strong, but empathetic, for example, right? That's the one that's connected to our heart, right? That's the one that has emotional intelligence. Okay, that side of us, right? That's the feminine side. Okay, and there's many ways to describe it, but in simple terms, masculine is the doer, right? And the feminine is the architect and the flower that just kind of flows, and is in tune with the heart. Love is all about building relationships, right? It's that part of you that just makes you feel like you don't need to be taking action. Like you can just go with the world, basically, right? Like you're the ocean, basically, or you're a drop in the ocean. You're just going. So that's masculine and feminine energy. Now we all have it, right? As men and women, or for example, men. I'm a straight man, basically, right? And so there's a certain way that these energies live off of me, basically, or showcase through me. Now, one thing to understand is sometimes the feminine energy is going to have to be superior to the masculine energy, right? I have to understand this balance. I just learned about this recently, right? So some days it's going to be okay to have more masculine. Some days it's going to be okay to have more feminine. Some moments it's going to require to be more feminine than more masculine. Like, for example, if somebody came to me with a very sad story, right? One of my teammates, for example, came in with a sad story, and I had to be emotionally available for them to share this. That's going to require me to get in tune with my feminine side, right? If my teammates need me to help them put an action plan together to get things done, that's going to require my masculine side to take off in that way, right? So it's important to have the awareness of the shift in the energies that needs to happen. Most people don't have the awareness, right? And that's when it can become a weakness in our life, if I may call it that, right? When we don't have awareness towards these energies. Now, there's understanding those energies as an individual and then understanding those energies in relationships, right? That's deep as well because in relationships, Laura, for example, a man who's not in tune with his heart, who's not emotionally intelligent, emotionally available, if he's not in tune with his heart and his emotions, then he cannot be in tune to the heart and the emotions of his significant other. There's no space that can be made for the significant other to feel comfortable showcasing this, right? A man who's in his hurt masculine, for example, might think that he needs to control or he needs to be aggressive to be able to get his, to be able to succeed in life or go through life, right? That is not a healthy masculine because there's healed masculine and then there's like and healed feminine and unhealed and there's so many different ways to look about it. So our here's one thing about masculine and feminine, our commitment and our intentionality behind one understanding it, but then choosing to reprogram ourselves is everything because we've been programmed through cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, and societal beliefs, and how a man or woman should be a lot of the time. And then we really dig deep and we're like, shoot, hold up, those relationships that I'm like looking up to, or those people that I'm looking up to, like, why do I look up to that? It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense, right? So I guess in short, that's masculine. Now I know I wanted to mention this, and good thing I didn't forget, right? So for anyone who's an entrepreneur, I was having a conversation with one of my coaching students, right? I do a little bit of business consulting as well, right? That's part of my coaching as well. And this person owns her cleaning company, very successful cleaning company in the area, and has grown it to a significant amount. And one of the conversations we talked about was about how she wanted to be in a position where she can do a lot more with free time if she had more free time. And I asked her, okay, well, what would you want to do in that free time? And she noted down a good amount of bullet points. Now, I kid you not, every single bullet point outside of one. Okay, so here's how it happened. And you're gonna notice a couple things here. So bullet point number one, oh, with my free time, I'd be cooking. With my free time, I'd be building relationships with my clients. With my free time, I'd be spending time with my little one. With my free time, I'd be doing just dancing around the house, basically, right? Just nature. I'd be doing things like that. What do all those things have in common? The thing that they all have in common is that's feminine energy. That's feminine energy. So you see, she's been living on all this masculine energy, right? But that's not what she wants to be doing. So does she want to, it's not about that she wants to build an empire. So the key was that she's always wanted to build freedom for herself, freedom for herself. And so she's been craving, she hasn't realized it, but she's been craving to be in her feminine, basically, right? So in entrepreneurship, it's important to understand this because a man and a woman, why we do things, why we do the thing we do, we're trying to build something for what? Oh, so that I can spend more time in my feminine side. By the way, this is a single parent, right? So she can spend more time in her feminine energy, basically, right? And so we were putting a little game plan for her to be able to do more of that and less of living on her masculine energy, basically, right? So there you go. That's a little bit of that. Hopefully that brought a little bit of value.
No, that really did because it took me back to a time in my own life where I realized that I was pretty much living in that masculine energy and that controlling energy. And I remember expressing to people, that person that I was with, like, I just want to be cooking at home. I want to be doing, and everything was more of that flowy that my soul was literally craving, but I wasn't allowing, or I wasn't making the room for it, or my body was in such a survival mode, constantly doing that. It's almost like I didn't actually feel comfortable just doing that because I felt like I constantly had to be achieving things, or else I wasn't doing good things with my life. I was being a loser. And that's something that I've been trying to have so much love with myself. When my body just feels like, the other day, I just wanted to just lay there, like lay and take a nap. And my mind was like, no, you have to do these things. You have to do these things. And I'm like, something, a voice inside me said, if you can't allow yourself to receive rest without you even like fully accepting it, how are you going to allow yourself to receive other bigger things? Like it was such a clear thought that came. And I normally feel so much shame within myself if I want to take a little nap and just lay there, because I'm like, no, I have to be doing something. I have to be working on myself and my spirituality, whatever that is, that just not allowing myself to just be still. And that was something very beautiful for that shift within me to say, I deserve to just lay here and take a baby nap and not feel guilty about it, and to just receive that. It was so small, but it was such a pivotal thing. It was deeper than that within me, because I feel like now I can allow myself more of those things that just bring me joy, that I want to do because I simply just want to do them. Not trying to get them
Exactly.
out.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's a big tip for, you know, all the ladies who want to spend more time on their feminine energy, right? So I had a conversation with an aunt of mine who's a entrepreneur, very successful and everything, and how she's approaching basically being able to live on her feminine energy basically a lot more. And I like the way she approaches, and I know many of you can also benefit from this, because whether you're an entrepreneur and you work around your own schedule or you have a 9 to 5, this key thing right here can really help you out. So what she did was she started scheduling it in. So if we think about it, what if we put a list of a lot of feminine things that we like to do, or things that make us feel like we're in our feminine, for example, right? As women, right? So let's just say, or whatever, right? Men too, right? Whatever it may be, right? So what if you jotted down like cooking or dancing or going on nature walks or something, right? And whether you have a 9 to 5 or an entrepreneur job, it's about scheduling it in, right? Because you want to be more in your feminine. So you have to ask yourself, how much time am I spending on my masculine on a daily basis versus my feminine side on a daily basis? And if you notice that you're too much on your masculine, not enough time on your feminine, then is it that you don't have time to be on your feminine, or is it that you're just not organizing it properly throughout your day, right? So she started categorizing things on her calendar, or organizing things on her calendar and scheduling it in, so that at this time she was doing, okay, nature walk. Okay, at this time I'm doing reading or just laying down and watching a movie, right? But scheduling it in. So now the polarity, right? The little balance of the amount of time you spend on your feminine and your masculine is balanced out properly. So that's something that you know, anyone can do, right? Put it on your calendar, right? And hey, to spend I want to spend more time doing this and that. Cool. Let me schedule it in. You have a 9 to 5, that's fine. Schedule it before 9, schedule it after 5 during your lunch break, but balance it out, and you'll see how impactful that can be.
Thanks for sharing that tip, because I catch myself so many times like, oh, I'm gonna do this, my self-care and my nails and just like my bad time and things. But because I don't schedule it in and I don't prioritize, I'm like, oh, my bedtime should be coming up, or else I'm gonna be grumpy the next day. And I just don't schedule it out. So it's kind of more, I'm allowing it to be whenever it happens, rather than being more intentional. So I'm definitely gonna be setting some time aside. I've been doing the yoga, setting time aside 20 minutes before sleep. So I'm definitely going to add that into my calendar, just so that I can be more intentional and prioritize those things, not just let them go and then feel regrets the next day that you didn't take care of yourself like you said you were.
I love that.
Yes. I know that you also mentioned earlier that you kind of mentioned a little bit of the what being on your wounded masculine energy, and then your divine masculine energy. Could you express some things that it looks like when you are on a wounded feminine energy?
A wounded feminine energy. And by the way, this can be taken on from a couple different approaches, right? A man or a woman, right? So I think I'll share I'll share a couple of experiences that I've had basically with some of my coaching students, right? Obviously, I won't mention names and things like that, right? But from a wounded feminine energy, it's not just men sometimes that can tap into their, you know, their heart basically. Sometimes women don't tap into their heart either, right? They don't tap into their heart because they've learned to just tap into their mind and tap into you know, just living on more of their masculine energy, right? But why is their feminine wounded? Sometimes it's because of traumas and things like that, right? Childhood traumas. For the most part, it tends to be childhood traumas. And by the way, are they valid reasons to have these things come up or have these turn into trauma. Some the things that happen to them, yeah, a lot of the time it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, their previous relationships. It's not their fault that these things happen, but it is their responsibility to heal these things, right? It's not their fault. It's not your fault. By the way, same thing as a man. It's not your fault if you go through things, but it is your responsibility to heal these things. And so, how does that show up in relationships? I mean, when you're on your wounded feminine, by the way, how does it show up in before a relationship too? If you're in your wounded feminine, you're not allowing space to surrender. You're not allowing space for a man like the man that you know you desire, your heart knows it desires, right? A decision maker, somebody that takes control, allows you to put your guard down, basically, right? You're not allowing space for that. So you keep attracting men that are the opposite. You keep attracting men that are the opposite, right? So if you're living too much on your masculine, for example, right, and you're always like having to be a decision maker, or you need to like feel like you need to control everything, basically, the decisions, or it's your way or the highway in the relationships as a woman, right? And it always has to be like that. Well, the question is, what kind of men are you going to attract, right? What kind of men are you going to attract? Well, you're going to attract men who are very submissive. You're going to attract men who just like let you take the ropes, right? Let you take the ropes. And how is that going to fall in line with a successful relationship? I mean, that's the truth. And unless you can learn to switch up the energy, then that's when things will shift. Same thing with a man. If they're living too much on their, on their feminine side, basically, right? And they haven't tapped into their masculine, right? Like, for example, let's just say I'm operating on a very like, I don't know how to make decisions for myself. I don't know how to take the lead in my life, basically, right? I I tend to like not be, I'm very wishy-washy with my purpose, right? Things like that. Then what kind of person will I attract? What kind of woman will I attract, basically, right? I'm going to attract somebody who's going to try to control me in my life, right? And so all of these things, like our wounded feminine, will show up, right? It'll show up and it'll affect our relationship. But the question is not how do I fix this relationship? The question is how do we fix ourselves, right? How do we fix ourselves so we can either help this relationship by fixing ourselves, right? Not fixing the other person, right? By fixing ourselves. Because it's so easy for somebody to be like, oh, my man is in his hurt masculine, right? What can I do to change him? You can't do anything to change that person. They have to change themselves. They have to take the lead decision themselves, right? Hopefully that helped. I know we kind of went this way and that way, but there's like so much to talk about with that.
Yes, no, that did. And it's so funny, and being able to, like you said, see what can I do rather than fix the relationship, because then you go into, oh, for me to try to fix this, let me be even more controlling and say, do this, do that. And then you get into this motherly role, it feels like. And I'm like, I'm not your mom. Why can't you be making these decisions? Why do I have to tell you, without realizing that, well, you're yourself that's also choosing to be in that role rather than stepping back and putting that light inward.
That's right. Yep.
Yes, I knowing now after it, it's so funny. I once you have that awareness, you can go back and just put so many lines together of how you really are the co-creator of your life, and you really do attract all of these things that you feel inward. Like I I also wanted to ask your perspective on this, because it's something that I see kind of come up, and I see it also on my feed so much. I think you've actually even made posts about this, where it's kind of like you see posts, or I see a lot of women essentially showing women how to be women that like don't seem themselves too available and stuff like that, which I 100% agree, because you should not, that you're not making yourself available, but because you genuinely are so focused on your life and discovering yourself and doing things that you love to do. But that concept of don't message them back, if don't be the first to do this and that without realizing, what is your point of that? Because I'm obviously not going to name friends, but I've got friends that come for me for advice, and I feel like I'm even like, I don't know, I'm not really out there having these kinds of things in my realm of reality right now, in the sense where it's like
Yeah.
the whole concept of, should women be reaching out to men, or in the sense of you want to also let them know you're interested, but then it's like, no, allowing them the room to take more of a lead because you want to be in your feminine energy. Is that making sense what I'm trying to?
Yeah, no, it is. So I think there's a difference between matching energy, right? And you putting yourself in a position where you're falling in love with an idea, right? Because here's the reality of it, right? Like I think this will help. You don't choose people that choose you. You choose people that choose you equally, right? Equally. And I had to make sure I elaborate on that because I used to always tell myself, choose people that choose you. No, you choose people that choose you equally. Because like, for example, me, I don't know how to love a little bit. I posted a post about that. I don't know how to love a little bit. I only know one way to love, and it's a very like all my love, passionate love, straightforward, basically, right? And I used to tell myself, man, I used to ask myself those questions like, oh, should I do this? Should I double text? Should I do that? And there was always like me like getting in my head basically, right? So one thing is getting in your head and like worrying or like, by the way, to some degree that's like abandonment issues, right? Because if you're too worried about them not responding or whatever, all this stuff, but should you intentionally do stuff to like get them to care more is the real question, to be honest, right? Because the re here, but here's even the deeper question. Why do I feel the need to do that to get them to care more about this scenario and what it could turn out to be? That's the real question. Why do I care, or why do I have to play these manipulative tactics or whatever to get this man to pay more attention to me or get this woman to pay more attention to me? Why? Like, are we not enough as we are? Do we have to like play this role to attract these people, right? The truth is, at one point, we've all done that, right? Oh, maybe if I ghost this person a little bit, they'll care more. Oh, it'll make them pursue more. Here's the reality of it. If I notice, for example, me, if I notice that I'm being ghosted or I'm being ignored, right? Or the energy is not being reciprocated. What I've understood now from like and it's an ongoing journey, but from like a healed masculine standpoint, is I'll release that. I'll let it go with love, right? From an unhealed standpoint, I'll chase it even more. I'll chase it even more. From a healed standpoint, if you want to attract a dependent, unhealed man, then you do that. You play those roles basically. Same thing with men like trying to, play all these tactics with women. You want to attract an unhealed woman, right? Who's got a lot of work to do, then play those games because she's gonna love those games.
Mhm.
But healed men and women, I based on my opinion and my experience, they'll notice it and they'll just remove themselves from the equation. Does that make sense? So I wanted to mention that. I also wanted to add something on top of that, Loda. So I did a training. I did a training before on this, and you had asked the one like, what's the wounded feminine like, basically, right? Wounded feminine. There's a couple other things that came to mind. One of them, I have it right here, right, is difficulty receiving support as women, right? I think that asking for advice or difficulty receiving any kind of support, basically, like you might know that somebody can help you, but you just want to be Miss Independent all the time, even though you know somebody can help you. That's another example of that. That's another example. And I don't mean to divert, but I thought about that one, right? Because I think so many women think that they need to do things by themselves. No, just because you can do something by yourself doesn't mean you should. Just to give you an example, I was in a relationship once where, the person said, oh, it's fine. I know how to change my own tire. Just because you know how to change your own tire doesn't mean you should if you have somebody that can take care of it. Does that make sense? So wanted to mention that, but hopefully I answered the previous question about, what my thoughts were basically on, thinking that we need to hold back to attract someone, etc.
Yeah, I guess I would like to get a little more clarity for my own understanding.
Yeah, go for it.
In that case, when you are worrying so much, say about why is that person not texting me? I'm saying in the perspective as a woman, because my friends are women and I'm like, I don't know what advice to give you. I feel like so, and I know that a lot of women have this thing because I see it all over social media as well. So and the perspective that the woman is like, I really like this guy, and he says the intentions are there, but they're not maybe messaging you as
Mm,
much as you want. Does
mm.
that ultimately come back to you,
Yep.
and like, what do you have to be like telling them those things right away, or just allow them to show up how they want to show up, and then you decide?
I
And
love that. I love that. So look, words versus actions.
mhm.
Words versus actions. That's when we fall in love with an idea. If we fall in love with words, we're falling in love with potential, with an idea. And by the way, it happens to many of us. It happens to me, right? And now I know how to discern it better, but it happens to me. And here's one thing to keep in mind. If it's confusing, it's not from God, right? Always remember that. It's not heard from your higher power. It sounds simple, but it's very true. It sounds confusing, it's not from God, not for you. Somebody's making it confusing or hard to understand, it's not for you. What I know is that a man who is pursuing, healthily pursuing, will never make you wonder where you stand in his life. And he'll show it with his actions. Because words, remember, anyone can say words. Anyone can say words. I was in a situation where, I was talking to somebody in the past, and this person was always saying words basically of what I meant to her, basically, right? What I was in her life and what things could look like and all this stuff. Sounded so great. Sounded so great. But the actions that were being placed behind them were not in alignment. So if actions are not there backing it up, then you have your answer then. You have your answer. If you ask yourself, hey, is this person giving off the same energy that I'm putting into it? And if the answer is no, well, then that's when you make a decision. That's when you stop falling in love with that idea of something, right? So understanding it's that simple. Words don't align with the actions, not for you. That simple, right? You're doing too much and they're doing too little. Well, the question is, am I really doing too much? Or are they just not able to reciprocate the kind of love that I bring to the table? Now, here's one thing that I'll share that I think is very powerful. And I just coached one of my students on this, and I just coached them on it because I knew it helped them. But number two, I knew that it was something that just helped me. And this just literally happened in the last couple of days. So, how do we know what's intuition and what's just an idea? How do
Yeah,
we know what's intuition and what's an idea? And I
yeah,
think that can help with not only this situation, but just everything in life, to be honest. And it's pretty awesome. Like coming to this discovery was beautiful. So how do we know? Well, we know because one gives us support from the universe or a higher power, and one doesn't give us support from the universe and a higher power, rather gives us confusion. Okay. So intuition, that's our higher power, that's our gut feeling, whatever people want to call it. An idea is that you fall in love with an idea basically of something, right? So I'll give an example. I was trying to discern in my life, what there was a couple opportunities that got presented in front of me, a couple income-based opportunities, business opportunities. And if something's backing you up, if it is followed by some sort of synchronicity. I know that word was used, right? And I mentioned to you that I was coaching one of my friends on that. Synchronicity is a set of events, right, that happens, um, and there's no other explanation as of you took an action step on a certain thing happening in your life or decision, and it was followed by backup from the universe or backup from God or whatever you want to call it. And that's how you know it's from God or universe. It's not forced. It just flows. It just flows. But the moment you fall in love with an idea, all of a sudden you go into questioning mode. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? What if this? What if that? That's because it's just an idea. It's not being backed up by synchronicity. What synchronicity? It would just flow. If, like, let's just say a guy started chatting up with you, right? You can easily fall if you're a woman, right? If a guy started reaching out to you, you can fall in love with an idea, or you can see how the synchronicity plays out. Are you having to force a situation or is it just flowing? Right? The moment you're like, oh shit, I'm having to force it. or I'm having to control the outcome of it, then it's not for you, right? And I came to that realization. It makes so much sense to me, right? I made a few business moves recently, and boom, business move, action step, synchronicity, boom, 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 synchronicity, boom, 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 back to back. That's from God. That's from the universe. Peaceful. There's no anxiety. There's no doubt in that. There's no confusion in that. So take that approach into those situations, and honestly, that's all you need to know. Is it confusing or is it not? Am I thinking about it too much or am I not?
Yeah.
And remaining in your receiving standpoint. Hey, I'm just here to receive. I'm just here to flow. A healthy masculine man will pursue. He'll reach out to you. He'll take the approach. And if he doesn't, then he's not a healthy masculine man. He's got some work to do.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for sharing the intuition, because that's definitely something I'm trying to learn how to decipher more, since for so long when an intuition feeling would come up, I'd be like, no, that's not intuition. And now I'm definitely trying to follow that. And I actually always remember what you said, if it's not a fuck yes, then it's a no for me. And I've been really implementing that a lot. And I'm even telling my friends, remember, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no, because I allowed myself to stay in places of confusion for so long, and then that didn't feel good. And when I do things that do feel good, it just tends to, like, I'm excited to do those, and they just flow so much better. So thanks for sharing that. I think that will be all that we go ahead and talk over today, Brian. Thank you so much for your time again. I appreciated this talk. I learned a lot.
Of course, no, it's a pleasure being on here and being able to share a couple insights. And I think if anything, the number one thing to leave with is anything in life that is confusing is not from God, is not from a higher power. That in itself will save you so much time in not only career choices, also in relationships, like you name it. That will keep you so much at peace, basically. And technically, that means the same thing as if it's not a fuck yeah, basically like you said, don't do it, to be honest. And it's that simple. It's that simple, right? It's simple, but it's not easy, right? Because you got to practice it. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes your reality. The more it becomes a part of you, and the more you learn to discern things faster. Right now, it might be a little hard for people to discern, oh, this way versus that way, intuition versus idea. But the more you practice it, it's like any muscle. It's like going to the gym and practicing a muscle. All of a sudden, boom, you're pretty good at discerning. Boom, this quick, this quick, this quick. And life becomes pretty peaceful as it should be. Life shouldn't be stressful. It shouldn't be all worried all the time and trying to put puzzles together that for pieces that don't even belong in your puzzle.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. And I would like to add to that, just don't, because it's something that I have to constantly remind myself, where I feel like I need to know the answers, but I'm like, I just remind myself, you don't need to know how. It's all going to play out. If it feels right in your heart, you don't need to know. You don't need to know. The answers will come, and just open yourself up, and synchronicities, like you said, started to happen. So Brian, where can we find you if we want to get in touch with you? Of course, I'm going to go ahead and link all of your social medias down below, but what social medias do you use? What platforms?
Yeah, I would say mainly Instagram and TikTok, and it's the same one, Coach Brian Avila, on all of them. So they can always follow right there. I have my website connected right there as well, and they can look at my content and like some stuff that relates to them, resonates to them, and yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
All right. Well, thank you again for this. I hope we can go ahead and sit down one day in the future again after we've gone through more of our journey and see what it is that we've learned so far.
Awesome. I'll be excited for that.
Thank you, Brian. Have a beautiful day. Thank you, everyone that watched this and took the time to sit down with us. Sending you guys all so much love. Mwah.